Hello and welcome. Thank you for listening. My name is Sarah Baumert. I'm a yoga teacher, Feldenkrais practitioner, and host of the Sarah B. Yoga podcast. The Sarah B. Yoga podcast and my practice, Body Matter, is an interdisciplinary learning space where we explore the many ways that movement can help facilitate body acceptance and awareness, reduce pain and stress, regulate the nervous system, and build strength and ease. My teaching plays with the synthesis of Feldenkrais awareness through movement lessons, traditional yoga asana, creative imagery, breathing exercises, self-massage, and a compassionate mindset to help you feel a greater sense of ease and comfort in yourself. Sarah B. Yoga and Body Matter have a lot of other program offerings. These podcasts are just a taste of my teaching. Each week I teach a range of online classes, including a gentle yoga class, a level 2 class for more advanced students, and Feldenkrais classes with monthly themes, anatomy lessons, and Q&A sessions for more in-depth study. I have 2 new online series offerings for the fall. A Feldenkrais series titled Coming to Your Senses, an exploration of the spaces of the eyes, the mouth, jaw, ears, vocal and breathing apparatus. And my second course, Wakeful Body, the blending of yoga and Feldenkrais on Monday nights. As one student recently described Monday nights, that felt like I just gave myself a massage. So these fall classes will be a continuation of some fan favorite stretching sequences that incorporate bolsters and other props to enhance the poses. There is still plenty of time to join these courses live or via the course recordings. You can find more information about these offerings in the show notes. Okay, on to today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Welcome to the Sarah B. Yoga podcast. This podcast is an intersection of my yoga teaching and my training in the Feldenkrais method. These classes are a mix of yoga, Feldenkrais awareness through movement lessons, self-massage, breathing exercises, movement puzzles, and a compassionate mindset to help you feel a greater sense of ease and comfort in yourself. In today's short Feldenkrais lesson, we will use the pubic bone, the tailbone, the creases of the hip joints, and the sitting bones as anatomical places of reference and awareness. This is a nice lesson to pair with episode 86, which was a yoga class with pubic bone awareness. In today's lesson, we continue this process of finding power and grace from your pelvis. And what sets this practice apart from other pelvic explorations that you may have done before is the subtlety of it all and the inner connections that you'll make from your perineum to your hip joints, as well as some pelvic floor awareness. For many people, this lesson might help you just start to simply sense your hip joints as a part of the pelvis, which can be a big thing. And at the end of the lesson, I will start to introduce a really subtle engagement of the pelvic floor in coordination with movements of the pelvis. The function of the pelvic floor has a profound effect on our quality of life, our sense of stability and strength, and anything that can be done to bring a little bit more ease or a higher quality of control in this area can be really revolutionary for people. So this mini lesson is an example of the direction that the lessons will start to take in the Pelvic Floor and Deep Core Rapport series. You can find more information about that series and my other online and live stream offerings on my website, body-matter.com, and all those links can be found in the show notes. All right, so let's get on to today's lesson. The lesson will be done lying on your back, but we'll begin in standing. So please come to stand and take a moment to walk around your space. Allowing yourself to begin to tune to your environment. So noticing as you walk around what starts to attract your attention. You can notice if that is something that's more internal, a sensation, a thought, a feeling, or is it something that's more external, something you might see or hear. And so without changing anything about the way you're walking, the way you're moving, simply continue to walk through your space. Start to bring some awareness to your pelvis. See if you can be present with your pelvis for a few moments. And it may just be a sense of curiosity. Noticing the quality of the observation, how your observation shifts as you direct your attention to your pelvis. Does anything change with your breath or even the quality of your mind? Might something shift in the way that you make contact with the earth? The pace of your walk? So now come to a place where you can come and rest on your back. So you could have a yoga mat, you could be on a blanket or a carpet. Generally, we're looking for something firm, but if you need more cushion and support underneath you, then take whatever you need. And lie with yourself on your back so that your knees are bent and the soles of the feet are on the floor. And your feet are about shoulder distance. So take a moment to feel the earth beneath you, the support beneath you. Feeling the process of yielding to gravity. And as you stay present with the sensations of you and how you meet the floor, observe the movements of your breath. The subtle changes in the shape of the torso. And it may be that the way you meet the floor changes a little bit as you breathe. Some areas may start to press a little bit. Some areas might start to feel lighter. Could you conceive that your breathing relates to your pelvis? The breathing diaphragm as you inhale, it moves downward in the direction of the pelvis. And the pelvis we can also think of as having its own diaphragm. So as you inhale and the breathing diaphragm moves towards your pelvis, notice if there's any kind of gentle shift in the way that you feel pressure towards your pelvis. And it might be a little abstract. Maybe it's a very internal pressure. Could even be a sense of contraction or expansion. And now bring awareness to your pubic bone. So the pubic bone is in the front of the pelvis, near the middle. It's a part of your pelvis that's facing the ceiling right now. So if you'd like to, you can bring your fingers there. You can just let the pads of your fingers rest on your pubic bone. And so the pubic bone is this place where the two sides of your pelvis come together in the front. There's a little bit of cartilage in between the two bones. So just let this part of yourself be really highlighted in your awareness. Your fingertips gently touching. And the fingertips should be, the hands are sort of pointed downward. Right? They're at a diagonal downward if the fingertips are coming towards one another. There's your pubic bone. And with each exhale breath, maybe you can let go of a little bit of activity in your fingers or your arms. You can let your hands settle a little bit more. Good. And now just start to conjure in your mind's eye the tip of your tail, the very base of your spine. And that may be more in your internal felt experience. Or for some of you, it might be that you imagine where the tip of your tailbone is. And then if we think about a place that's halfway between the tailbone and the pubic bone, maybe it's somewhere near your perineum. So you can just let your attention rest there. Where would that be? Halfway between your tail and your pubic bone. Great. Now slide your hands a little bit apart so that the pads of your fingers are resting somewhere around your hip joints. So if you sense the creases of your hips, your hip joints are right there in the crease. Remember, your knees are bent right now, and the soles of the feet are on the floor. So there's that crease that's happening in your hips. And just let your fingers, your hands rest there for a moment. Find a comfortable way to do that. And if you draw a line between these two hip points, so it'll be just above your pubic bone, not too far above your pubic bone. Start to imagine that you have a ball resting somewhere in the base of your sacrum. Just observe for yourself. The sacrum is that flat part of the spine that sits between the two halves of the pelvis. You imagine you have a ball that has some density that's resting at the base of the sacrum. So if you feel a little drop towards the floor there. Now very softly start to roll that ball towards the tip of your tail. It will arch the back a little bit. It will tip your pelvis. And then roll that ball back to its place where it settles, right there at the midline, somewhere right between your two hip joints, right in the center. And then slowly roll that ball back towards your tail. And roll it back to this place, this space that's halfway between your two hip joints, there at your midline, settling in the basin of the sacrum. So with each cycle, you roll the ball towards the tail, and then you roll the ball so that it settles right between your two hip joints, right in the center. With each cycle, see if you can make that a little bit softer so you can let go of the need to push with your feet. And you begin to utilize the muscles in your back, maybe your belly. And can you start to imagine that this ball rolls a little beyond your tail? It continues somewhere near your perineum. So the perineum is that bit of flesh that's in front of your anus and just behind your sexual organs. And then you roll the ball back to its home base resting at the sacrum. So just imagining that ball goes a little bit farther beyond your tail when you roll it to the tail. Now, the next time that the ball is at the level of your perineum, roll the ball so that you can roll the ball over towards your left hip. So organize yourself so that you roll the ball over towards that left hip, just behind that left hip crease, just beneath where your fingers are. And now roll the ball across a straight line over to the right hip joint, passing through the middle. And from the right hip joint, roll the ball back towards the perineum. So we're doing a little bit of a triangle. And stay with that. Do that several times. Rolling the ball from the perineum to your left hip joint, from the left hip joint across to the right hip joint, from the right hip joint diagonally down and towards the perineum, letting the pelvis tilt. So as you do this, you can use your fingers, your hands to sense and feel what's happening underneath. Noticing where along the back of your pelvis, where along your sacrum does the ball travel from the left to the right side. And the next time that that ball is resting near the perineum, you've tilted your pelvis, pause there for a moment. And a few times just roll the ball back up the midline to that place where it's settled at the base of the sacrum, the bottom, the floor of the sacrum. And then roll it again towards the perineum and back towards the sacrum. So you feel this straight line towards the tail and then back towards what might feel more like the back of your pelvis. Feel how that movement travels through you. Even though it's a small movement, do you sense it through your spine? Do you feel your knees, your ankles responding? And the next time that you roll the ball towards the perineum, then start to roll it towards your right hip or towards your right hip joint. From your right hip joint, roll the ball across the midline over to your left hip joint. And from the left hip joint, it moves back to the perineum. So now you're tracing that triangle in the opposite direction. And start to observe for yourself, is this direction different? Continuing to feel the support of the surface beneath you. So you have the sense of this triangle, maybe even an image of these different points that you're rolling the imaginary ball to. Great. And then let that rest and just settle. Bring your hands just so they're resting on your lower belly. So maybe just a subtle shift of where your hands are. And as you inhale, feel the diaphragm expand downward so that the belly expands. And feel this sense that the pelvic floor, which is between your pubic bone and your tail, that whole space, it goes as wide as your sitting bones. Feel that that space softens, maybe even opens a little bit, expands away from your head as you inhale. So you're relaxing, trying to sense a softness as much as you can relax the pelvic floor. Then as you exhale, the diaphragm domes upward in the direction of your head. And could you just imagine that the pelvic floor mimics that? It does a similar thing where it starts to draw headward. Just imagining it right now. So you inhale, and you can feel the pressure of the inhale moving towards the pelvic floor. Soften, relax the pelvic floor, feeling that it could expand. And as you exhale, the breathing diaphragm draws headward, and you imagine that the pelvic floor diaphragm does a similar thing. And as you continue to breathe like that, as you're exhaling, you can start a very subtle sensation of the pelvic floor diaphragm drawing up a little bit. And so this is subtle. This area between the sitting bones could contract a little bit towards your center. And if you've ever done anything like Kegels, it is much more subtle than that. Far less effort. So as you're exhaling, see if you can actually develop a gradiated sense of control, a slow engagement of the pelvic floor as you exhale. And then as you're inhaling, slowly soften, release the pelvic floor, and wait. Wait until you feel that the pelvic floor is absolutely relaxed as it can be. And then as you exhale, you feel the breathing diaphragm draw towards your head, and just find that very subtle beginning of a contraction of the pelvic floor in the same direction that the breathing diaphragm is going. So we want to think about the engagement here like a dimmer switch. Rather than a light switch that you turn on and you turn off. So it's not a sudden or sharp contraction. That's not what we're looking for. Can you finesse this area, these muscles, so that you slowly feel them start to contract, just a small amount. And if it feels okay, a little bit more. And then as you release them, you don't let it go all of a sudden. You slowly release and relax. And just trusting that you can make this milder and milder. So if there's any strain at all, take a break or make the movement, the engagement of the pelvic floor more mild. Okay, everybody, let's pause. Take your legs long for a moment. Notice your awareness of your pelvis. And bend your knees again, stand your feet. So we're going to link together that rolling of the pelvis towards the tail and then back towards a more neutral place with our breathing and with this engagement of the pelvic floor. So as you inhale, can you gently roll the pelvis towards the tail? You can imagine that ball, imaginary ball, rolling towards the tail, towards the perineum. There's your inhale, and you're trying to feel a softness, almost an opening or an expansion of the pelvic floor. And as you exhale, you can roll the imaginary ball back towards your sacrum, gently starting to engage, feeling like the pelvic floor can draw headward, just like the breathing diaphragm does on your exhale. So you're doing this with the pacing of your breath right now. Inhaling, rolling towards the tail. Really wait, take some time to wait for the pelvic floor to completely relax. And as you exhale, rolling that imaginary ball towards the top of the sacrum, engaging the pelvic floor as you do that on exhale. And continue this as mildly as you would need to if you were going to do it for 10 minutes, and we won't do that for 10 minutes, but how pleasant, how mild would you need this movement to be to feel good right now, and for it to feel good later? And gently take a rest. And just stay connected with this image that you have of your pelvis, an internal sensation and feeling, as well as a visual image that you may have of your pelvis, its three-dimensionality. And when you're ready, you can roll to your side and come to sit, come to stand. And still trying to stay connected with the image of the pelvis. Once you're in standing, start to walk. And feel what it's like to hold this image, to be present with the image of the pelvis and with these different aspects of your pelvis as you move through your space, move through the world. So staying curious about how your pelvic floor relates to your breathing. And this could be an awareness moment that you have throughout your day where you bring focus to your breathing. You can let the breathing be your guide for pace. And as you exhale, you see if you can start to turn up the dimmer switch of the pelvic floor engagement. And as you breathe in, see if you can turn down the dimmer switch and soften the pelvic floor. And you can try that here as you're walking. You don't have to coordinate it with your steps. Right now, we're coordinating it with our breath, but it doesn't have to coordinate with the breath. So there's lots of different variations that we can use because we want the pelvic floor to be dynamic, to be able to engage in all sorts of functions in a way that's useful, whether you're breathing in or breathing out. We would like the pelvic floor to know how to engage and know how to soften. So this is just the beginning of that. I hope this was interesting for you. Stay curious about it. Thanks so much.
Are you enjoying this podcast? I've chosen to offer these audio recordings freely for over 15 years. I do this because research shows yoga, yoga nidra, and Feldenkrais to be valuable practices, those which I would like to share widely. Dana, the Buddhist practice of generosity, has always been a pillar of my business. And more generally, Dana is the inclination to give without expecting any form of repayment. It does, however, take a fair amount of time, effort, and cost to maintain and keep the podcasts available. If you feel you've benefited from what you've learned from these classes, then please do consider making a contribution towards the maintenance and upkeep of the classes. It will help ensure that I can continue to offer the podcast classes freely and keep generating new material. Give what you can. Give what feels good. If it's too little, it won't feel good. If it's too much, it won't feel good. Links to support the show monetarily can be found in the show notes. And other ways to give include sharing the podcast with others, leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just sending me an email with how the classes have affected you. Thanks so much.